We, of course, have the Alice in Wonderland event that has come to Raid Shadow Legends, and with that, we have gotten a bunch of new champions, one of which is actually going to be Cheshire Cat, I believe is how you'd say it, who looks absolutely fantastic. They did a very good job making this character look incredibly badass inside the game, and he has some very, very good ratings so far. So I've hopped on to the account of one of my clan mates here, Nick Cug, as you can see, and we are going to go ahead and do a little showcase review and kind of pseudo guide on this particular champion. I don't have him on my account yet. I don't know if I'm going to be lucky enough to get him. We'll have to wait and see, I guess. So what has he got going on? Well, he is very interesting, and we're not fully booked out. So this is going to be a very accurate representation of how the champion will perform, most likely on your account, for a free-to-play or certainly a low-spender account, of course. We have an A1, attacks one enemy if this champion is under a Veil or Perfect Veil buff, attacks all enemies instead, places a Perfect Veil buff on this champion for 1 turn. So it's a very interesting A1. He's going to have an AoE very similar to a Oberu, right, who's very insane inside the Hydra because of her potential AoEs. Granted, his setup is far more simplistic. She has to have an enemy that's under 4 or more debuffs. He essentially just has to be under a Veil or Perfect Veil, any AoEs. He has an interesting multiplier for this, so the attack is going to be times 1 plus speed divided by 100. So what does that mean? Well, his speed is going to be 232. So essentially, what we're doing is we're taking attack times, and then it's going to be a flat rate of 1 plus the 232 divided by 100. So it's a very complicated calculation, and it's going to work out to about a 3.3 times attack multiplier on the A1. Now, that doesn't seem to change versus the AoE or single target, so he can be very strong if you have him set up correctly. A2, Feline Frenzy, attacks one enemy 3 times each hit, decreasing the enemy's speed by 1%, stacking up to 10%. This effect does not work against bosses. Each hit will also increase this champion's speed by 1%, stacks up to 10%. If this skill kills an enemy, places a Perfect Veil buff on this champion and the ally with the lowest turn meter for 2 turns. So of course, this guy could be very strong inside the Hydra, right? Placing that Perfect Veil, if he manages to kill an enemy, I imagine that would count against the heads of the Hydra. And then keeping the Veil on himself means he's going to be doing that extra AoE on the A1. And then, of course, the ally with the lowest turn meter is pretty nice to go ahead and help your team survive as well. The multiplier for this one is attack times, and then the base of 0.5 times speed divided by 100. So it's not plus, it's times, so the calculation is a lot more weird on this. So I'm going to go ahead and whip out the calculator on my phone, and we'll see what we're working with roughly. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do 0.5 times 232 divided by 100. So the multiplier on this is going to work out to about a 1.16 as long as my mathematics are correct. 232, I'm just going to do math differently here and see if that works. So that's going to be about a 2.32, and then 0.5 times 2.32 equals 1.16. So yeah, that's his multiplier. So with this particular build and this speed, he's working out to about a 1 point some odd multiplier. So it's roughly a 3 times damage, which is not very strong, in all honesty. You're really just counting on the extra abilities, or the extra parts of this ability, essentially, to really make it work and make him stronger over time. That being said, I'm also interested to see if this is like Harima's A2, because Harima's A2 is irresistible, the defense decreasing, right? So she doesn't have to have accuracy to pull that off, so that he's going to be so much stronger if that's the case. And finally, we have Grinning Helix, where he attacks all enemies before attacking, places a Perfect Veil on himself, as well as an increased attack for 2 turns. Grants an extra turn if this attack kills an enemy. The multiplier for this one is, again, attack 1 plus speed divided by 100. So we're going to be roughly at about a 2 point somewhat attack multiplier there as well, which Hell Hades lists these all as like average and strong multipliers. We'll see. We'll do some testing with them. Ally speed in all battles by 19. And then we do have passive effect, where if he's under a Veil or Perfect Veil buff, turn meter fill effects are 30% more effective. So think of your, Arbiters, Lissandras, those sorts of things. Also, if this champion is under a Veil or Perfect Veil buff, this champion's attacks will ignore 15% of the target's defense and inflict 15% more damage, which is quite strong. Active effect, whenever he is about to receive a hit that would drop their HP below 20%, blocks the incoming damage and places a block, damage, and Perfect Veil on this champion for 1 turn. Very, very strong. So he's essentially going to have like an unkillable kind of mechanic, which will be very useful, especially inside the arena. Let's go ahead. Let's take a look and see what we're working with in terms of masteries and whatnot. So the Arbiter that we have here is actually faster than him, which is perfect because we're going to use the Arbiter as a setup. So we don't have any relics, which is understandable. We do have the regular nuke masteries coming down here to Helm Smasher and Encounter Attack masteries, of course. And for the stats, this is how we're looking. We're going to be doing the damage test inside Dragon's Lair, where we have no area bonuses. So 5,000 attack, 232 on the speed, 102, and then 261 on the crit rate and crit damage, respectively, and then 224 on the accuracy. So if we take him into the arena, it's very likely that he's not going to have enough accuracy to land the decreased speed mechanic on the enemies, unless it is irresistible. So it's going to be very cool to kind of see what we're working with here. So I'm going to go ahead and just do kind of a damage test with him here on Dragon 20 normal, so we can kind of see what we're working with. This is a save team, which is perfect, so we're going to go ahead and just remove this. Now, he is, of course, a Spirit Affinity champion, which means that in all likelihood, we should probably do the test on a different stage. So let's do it on stage 19, just so the stats are as close as possible to stage 20, without really making this unfair. So we're going to go ahead and do something like this. It's very nice to see that he has the speed in all battles by 19% as well. It means that he's going to be a bit more of a viable champion for something like, for example, the Siege, right? And I just noticed that we actually have mod on this particular account too, so I might have to bug my clanmate to get back in here and do another guide at some point on mod, because that would be pretty cool. I don't have her yet either. Let's go ahead and see what else we're going to be doing. So we're going to bring in Lydia. This Lydia, I just have to double check. I'm not familiar with the account, but I want to make sure she's faster. 269. What is our speed actually at? I just read it out not long ago, but I don't remember. 232, so she is faster. So we have increased attack on Duchess, I believe, right? Yes, we do. And I have to make sure because I don't have Duchess almost 5 years into playing the game, which is pretty fun. But it is what it is. So I just want to make sure that I know what I'm doing here. Essentially, we're going to do the Veil on everybody. We're going to do then the decrease attack and decrease... the decreased defense and the weaken. Now let's go ahead and let's take a look here. So I think we're going to start with his A2, where he's decreasing the speed, so we can get a bit of additional speed scaling. So let's go ahead and let's go into the, I think this is Crimson Helm here. Boom, boom, boom. He's doing about 33k per hit. Not bad for an A2, especially for something that's going to scale up over time. I would kind of expect to see a little bit more from a legendary champion, in all honesty, especially considering that Lydia's hitting for 18,000. However, again, keep in mind, he's not booked out. He could have technically a bit better gear, right, with more crit rate, crit damage, ascensions, all that sort of stuff for rather awakenings. Let's do the AoE. So with this AoE, he's going to place a perfect veil and increase attack on himself, and he's going to grant an extra turn. Let's go ahead. Let's see what he can hit for. 140k there, doing a bit more damage. Before this, I actually did a showcase on... a Slixus on my account, the Epic Champion. You're going to see that coming out on probably Friday. I think this video is going to go live on Wednesday. And then so on Friday, you'll see that showcase. And a bit of a spoiler alert, Slixus was actually doing more damage. Granted, he had a bit more stats and an awakening and all that sort of stuff too. Let's go ahead. Let's go with his A1 here. So I am very interested to see what kind of damage we can do on the A1. Boom. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, now we're kind of talking. So we can do some good damage on the A1, which is quite nice, and which also means that he's going to be very effective for kind of somewhere like Hydra with a ally attack team or those sorts of things. I do apologize for using so much of your energy there. If we still have a Hydra key available, I think we don't have Hydra keys available, unfortunately. So that is interesting, though. I think this champion could be very, very strong for use somewhere like Hydra. Because that A1 damage that we just seen is actually pretty out there, right? Because keep in mind, so Orboru, who is the other, like, kind of very common AoE A1 champion that you use inside Hydra, she has a weaker multiplier for her AoE, right? So her single target version and then her AoE version of the A1 have different multipliers. He does not. The multipliers are the same, so you can get very strong damage out of it potentially, which is quite nice. Let's go ahead And let's go against a team like this here. So I think we're probably going to keep somebody like Lady Kimmy in here, and then maybe Eostrid as well. We're going to go ahead and bring in Arbiter, and then we're obviously going to go ahead and bring in the Cheshire Cat as well. And let's see what we can do. The Arbiter is a bit slower than I would like to see, so it's very possible we get beat on the speed race, but we don't, so that's okay. Lady Kimmy is quite fast. Let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and do this. Eostrid's now going to come in and boost us up even further, as well as boosting them back. And we don't have a perfect veil on him, which is a bit of a shame, so he's not going to do an AoE on the A1. So instead, I think we're going to go ahead and start with the A3, and boom, he does actually take everybody out. 110k there on the Arbiter. Very solid damage. Granted, this the team we fought wasn't incredibly strong, right? So only 10 million player power. Let's go against maybe a team like this, although again, it's quite a low-ranked player. I'm kind of curious how we could do against something like this as well. Let's go ahead and see if we can just outspeed them here. We have a lot of, like, you know, turn meter boosting and whatnot going on our team, which is quite nice. So let's go ahead and do this. We're going to do this, just to see what kind of damage he can do, essentially, of course. So let's go ahead and decrease everybody's blah, blah, blah. We then get the extra turn because he has killed somebody. So then what we can do is we can go ahead essentially and just do the A2 into the Siegfried there to decrease his speed. And it does actually appear to be irresistible, because I noticed that Siegfried was ignoring some of our other effects on him because it looked like we didn't have enough accuracy. So let's go ahead, let's get that AoE. We do about 13k to him there on a weak hit, which is pretty decent, all things considered. Siegfried is absolutely going to demolish us, though, especially with the Soul Reap Blessing. Boom! We go ahead, we get counterattacked by him, and it takes us out. That is interesting. Arbiter isn't fully equipped either, which is interesting, so we could have her faster if we had more gear on her. It is what it is. This particular player has 19 million player power, so a bit more of a established account. Let's go ahead and see what we're capable of doing against this particular team here. Just have to look at my second monitor there to close the Hell Hades website, which I was using to provide the multipliers to you guys. So this champion, I think, is going to be a lot stronger if you use him with some sort of a team that can set him up with the perfect veil. However, of course, getting that increase, getting the perfect veil and then the extra turn based off of killing somebody is very strong. So we don't have a strip there. We're just going to go ahead and do something like this. We're going to go ahead and try to decrease durations, which is quite nice. He does survive there, which is nice. So he is under a perfect veil as well, which means that he is going to do an AoE here, so we can kind of see what he is capable of on that A1. We attack everybody, decrease speed, decrease turn meters. Let's go ahead. Let's do that AoE. Boom! 74k there on the Wukong, and then about 20k it looks like on the Pythion there. Obviously, Pythion's going to be significantly more tanky than Wukong, right? Or at least you would expect so. Let's go ahead. Let's just keep kind of tapping into them here. We do get sheeped, unfortunately, by the Wukong, which means that apparently we were tanky enough to survive, which is nice. We're going to go ahead and increase our turn meters there, get the increased attack on them, more increased turn meters. Same thing coming in with the Eostrid. Let's see what we can do here. And then we should have our A3 available. Maybe not, actually, because we did have to use the second turn there. Let's go ahead. Let's get the single target. We don't get the AoE because we weren't under a veil or a perfect veil, of course, but that is perfectly okay. We do have one now. So we'll go ahead, see if we can decrease the turn meters there a bit. Put the Elva to sleep would be quite nice, but we don't. I'm excited to see his A1 now. I think it should pretty much sit them down. Boom! AoE. The only one to survive is Thor because he was weak hit. So you can see we have very decent damage coming out from the Cheshire Cat there. Cheshire, I don't know how to say it. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Very solid champion, all things considered. I do think based on his A1, if you're setting him up inside Hydra correctly, so if we go in here, I don't even know if I can get, I can't get to the screen, but if you were to bring in somebody like a Duchess, obviously, right, who has that A2 that brings the increased attack and then also the perfect veil, more importantly, and then you just have him pumping with like maybe a Lady Mikage, Farrakhan the Fat, you know, some sort of champion like Cardiel, basically just any sort of attack, ally attack champion, it could be very strong. So I do think he is worth testing in that particular area. I'll have to maybe do a follow-up video on that at some point, because so far, first impressions, he seems like he's going to be kind of like an Oberu. but maybe a little bit better for that particular role. And certainly, if you had him awakened, right, in some sort of like a cruelty or something like that, he could be very strong. Let's talk about awakening. So we don't have any blessings on him, but if we did, there's a few different ways you could run him. So he's not placing debuffs, so Nature's Wrath is pretty much out. Crushing Rend could be very strong if you have him high awakened, where he's ignoring a portion of the defense. Polymorph, of course, would be very strong as well, especially if you're using him inside PvP-based content. And then, of course, Cruelty with those constant AoE A1s. Even a 1-star Awakened Cruelty is still going to decrease everybody's defense by 5%. And it's only going to take him 5 turns or 5 hits to do that. Again, on a 1-star Awakening, right? So if we look at him in a 6-star Awakening, he's going to be decreasing boss defense by 20% at 4% per hit. So he can definitely set up for the rest of your team, like maybe a Thor or a, you know, any sort of a damage dealer. The other one I've forgotten. So Varl the Destroyer, for example. Absolutely fantastic options to pair with him as well. The one thing to mention, he has been added into the Demon Spawn faction, so he's right here, of course. And that does, unfortunately, mean that for PvP purposes, he is hard countered and directly countered by somebody like a Harima. She is going to absolutely decimate him, and I don't think he brings enough damage to the table to really be able to go against a Harima team effectively. That being said, though, he isn't predicated on ignore defense effects like somebody like a Sun Wukong, for example, so he's not going to be hit as hard, but he also can't, I believe, do criticals or anything like that against Harima as well because of her passive. That's part of it there. So a very interesting champion, surely. Let me know if you guys have him built and where you use him. I'd be very curious to hear about how he performs on your particular account. Thank you guys all so much for the support on the channel as always, and I'll see you next time.